The silent arrival, the discovery. Commander Music, Zelthar of the V-Win. Collective stood before the observation. Deck of the eternal harmony, watching. The stars drift past in their ancient dance. For 300 cycles his fleet had patrolled this sector of the Andromeda. Passage without incident, the 17 ships under his command represented 6 different species, all united under the banner of the Galactic Assembly. They were explorers, peacekeepers, and diplomats rolled into one harmonious force. The V-Win were an old race, their civilization spanning 40,000 years. They had long silver skin that shimmered like liquid metal and 3 eyes that could see across multiple spectrums. Zelthar had witnessed many wonders in his 2 centuries of service, but nothing had prepared him for what was about to appear on his sensors. His science officer, a young Thorin named Kelix, suddenly straightened at his station. The Thorins were insect-like beings with crystalline exoskeletons that refracted light into beautiful patterns. Kelix's mandibles clicked nervously as he studied his readings. "Commander, we have an anomaly," Kelix announced, his voice carrying an unusual tremor. "A vessel has just entered our sensor range, but the readings are inconsistent with any known signature in our database." Zelthar moved to the central command platform with fluid grace. Around him, officers from various species turned their attention to the main display. There were the more than beings of pure energy contained in specialized suits, the Kravik, 6-limbed creatures covered in bioluminescent scales, the Yori, floating jellyfish-like entities that communicated through color changes. "Show me," Zelthar commanded. The main screen flickered to life, displaying what appeared to be a ship unlike anything in the Assembly's extensive records. It was moving slowly through space, its trajectory suggesting it was on a survey mission, but something about it made every instinct Zelthar had developed over 2 centuries scream in warning. The impossible design. The vessel was roughly 1,200 m in length, dwarfing most ships in the Assembly fleet, but size alone did not explain the reaction rippling through the bridge crew. The design was what shocked them. Where Assembly ships flowed with organic curves and elegant lines that spoke of thousands of years of artistic and engineering refinement, this thing was brutal in its simplicity. It was angular and dark, covered in what appeared to be thick armor plating scarred with impact marks and burn patterns. Weapons bristled from every surface, not the elegant energy projectors common to civilized warfare, but crude, powerful kinetic systems that looked capable of tearing through solid matter. Point defense turrets clustered in overlapping fields of fire. Missile batteries were recessed into armored housings. Everything about the ship screamed one single purpose: survive and destroy. "Analysis, Kelix," Zelthar said quietly. He noticed his own hands were trembling slightly, an embarrassing display he quickly controlled. Kelix worked at his station with all 4 of his primary manipulators. His crystalline body had lost some of its usual sparkle, dulling with what Zelthar recognized as fear. "Commander, the power output from their reactor is beyond anything I have ever measured. They are generating enough energy to power an entire assembly battle group. Their armor is not energy-based shielding like ours. It appears to be physical plating layer upon layer of dense alloys. I detect at least 7 separate armor belts. A more than officer named Vex, his energy form pulsing with agitation inside his containment suit, spoke up. Why would anyone build a ship that way? Shields are far more efficient than physical armor. This is primitive, is it? Asked the Kravik's tactical officer. Her scales had shifted to a deep orange, indicating concern. Look at the damage patterns on that hull. Those are combat scars, real combat, not training exercises. That ship has been in multiple engagements and survived them all. Every impact crater, every burn mark tells a story of a battle where the ship was hit and kept fighting. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The assembly had not fought a real war in over 8,000 years. Their weapons existed primarily as ceremonial reminders of a darker age. The idea that someone still built warships designed for actual prolonged combat was almost incomprehensible. The silence attempt communication. Zelthar ordered. Standard first contact protocols. Kel sent out greetings in 47 different languages, broadcast across all standard frequencies. The message was simple and had worked for thousands of successful first contacts. Unknown vessel, this is the Galactic Assembly ship Eternal Harmony. We come in peace and friendship. Please identify yourself. They waited. Seconds stretched into minutes. The human ship continued its slow drift through space, neither accelerating nor changing course. Its weapons remained trained forward, not targeting the assembly fleet, but not standing down either. It simply existed in space like a monument to something the assembly had forgotten how to understand. Try again, Zelthar said. After 5 minutes of silence. Use all frequencies including subspace. Kellex complied, his mandibles clicking more rapidly now. The bridge crew watched and waited. The alien vessel remained silent. An hour passed. The silence became oppressive, pressing down on everyone present. Several officers had begun to show signs of stress. Yori's colors had shifted to dark purples and reds. The Moran's energy forms flickered erratically. Even Zelthar felt his composure cracking. Why do they not respond? Thea wondered aloud. Do they not receive our signals? They receive them, Kellex confirmed. I can detect minor fluctuations in their systems corresponding to our transmissions. They hear us. They simply choose not to answer. That realization sent a chill through the bridge. The ship was not damaged. Its crew was not dead. They were listening to every word the assembly said, analyzing every signal sent their way, and deliberately choosing silence. The question that haunted every mind present was simple and terrible. Why? The growing dread. As the second hour began, Zelthar made a decision that would have seemed absurd just a few hours earlier. Tactical alert. All ships are to activate defensive systems and maintain maximum distance from the unknown vessel. The scales flickered with surprise, shifting through several colors before settling on questioning yellow. Commander, we have no indication of hostile intent. Standard protocols for first contact do not include defensive measures. Standard protocol, Zelthar said slowly, his 3 eyes fixed on the dark ship displayed before him. Assume we are dealing with a civilization that thinks like we do. I'm no longer certain that assumption applies here. He moved closer to the screen, studying every detail of the alien vessel. There was something about it that spoke to ancient instincts buried deep in the VR and psyche, instincts from before they had evolved. civilization before they had learned to solve problems with words instead of violence. This ship reminded him of predators from his home worlds, prehistoric era creatures that hunted in the dark and struck without warning. Around him, his crew worked to comply with his orders. Assembly ships began powering up shield generators that had not been activated for real defense in anyone's lifetime. Weapon systems that existed primarily as museum pieces were brought online, their operators studying manuals they had never needed before. The human ship remained silent, watching them with sensors they could not fully understand, judging them by standards they had never encountered and saying absolutely nothing. The revelation, the first words on the third hour of silence. Something changed. The human ship's running lights flickered, a pattern that Kellex immediately recognized as intentional communication. Before he could report it, every console on the Eternal Harmony's bridge came to life simultaneously. Data streams flooded their systems, not attacking, but overwhelming with sheer volume. "Commander, they're transmitting," Kel shouted over the alarms, "but this is not a greeting, this is a historical archive. They are sending us there. History, can we stop it?" Zilthar asked, fighting the urge to order the data purged. "We could, but Commander, I think we should watch. They want us to understand something before they speak to us." Zilthar made a decision that felt both foolish and necessary. Display it. All stations observe. The main screen filled with images that would haunt the assembly crew for the rest of their lives. They saw humans, bipedal mammals with smooth skin and forward-facing eyes, fighting each other with primitive weapons. Swords and spears gave way to firearms that gave way to chemical weapons that gave way to nuclear fire. The assembly officers watched in growing horror as humans demonstrated in capacity for violence that defied comprehension. They saw cities turn to ash in single instants. They saw soldiers dying in trenches filled with poison gas. They saw machines designed for nothing but killing, refined over generations into ever more efficient tools of death. This was not the growing pains of a young civilization. This was industrialized slaughter raised to an art form. But then the images shifted. Alongside the wars, they saw something else. Humans building generation ships to carry their families across impossible distances. Humans terraforming dead worlds over centuries of patient work. Humans standing on alien soil, planting flags, crying with joy at their achievement. They saw a species that could look at a universe designed to kill them and decide to conquer it anyway. Understanding dawn. The transmission ended. For a long moment no one spoke. Then a voice filled the bridge, transmitted on all frequencies simultaneously. It was rough and carried an accent that made the translation software struggle, but the words were clear enough. "Galactic Assembly Ship Eternal Harmony, this is Captain Sarah Chin of the Human Colonial Defense Force vessel Indomitable. We apologize for the delayed response. We wanted you to understand who you were speaking with before we began negotiations." Zilthar forced himself to respond, though his voice shook slightly. "Captain Chin, I am Commander Zilthar. May I ask why you felt that display was necessary?" There was a pause before Chin responded. When she did, her voice carried something that sounded like sadness. "Commander, we have been monitoring your transmissions for the past 3 hours. We have learned your language, studied your culture, analyzed your technology. You have built a peaceful civilization that has not known real war in 8 millennia. That is beautiful. That is something my people dream of achieving someday, but it also means you have forgotten something important. And what is that? Zelthar asked, genuinely curious despite his fear. You have forgotten what it costs to survive when the universe does not want you to exist. Commander, humanity crawled out of the gravity well of a death world. Our home planet tried to kill us with predators, diseases, weather, and 1,000 other dangers. We spent 200,000 years learning to fight for every scrap of existence. When we finally reached the stars, we discovered we were alone. No benevolent assembly waited to welcome us. No ancient civilizations offered protection. There was just cold, empty space and worlds that would kill us if we made a single mistake. The bridge crew listened in silence as Chen continued. We built this ship and others like it because we learned a hard lesson. In a universe that does not care if you live or die, strength is the only guarantee of survival. We do not seek war, Commander. We seek to ensure that if war finds us, we will be the ones who walk away from it. The philosophy of survival, the era. The Kravik's tactical officer spoke up, her scales shifting to contemplative blue. Captain Chin, the assembly has maintained peace for 8,000 years through diplomacy and cooperation. We have proven that strength through unity is superior to individual military might. Why would you choose isolation and weapons over joining a civilization that could protect you? Chen's laugh was bitter. Officer, you misunderstand our position. We are not asking to join your assembly. We are here to inform you that humanity has claimed 17 systems in this sector for colonization. We are offering you the opportunity to establish diplomatic relations on equal terms, not as supplicants seeking protection, but as equals offering mutual respect. The audacity of that statement left the bridge crew speechless. A species barely a century into space travel, claiming sovereignty and demanding equal treatment with civilizations thousands of years older. It should have been laughable. But looking at that battle-card warship with its overwhelming firepower and armor built to survive sustained combat, no one was laughing. Zelthar felt something shift in his understanding. The assembly had grown comfortable in their peace, complacent in their assumption that their way was the only way. They had forgotten that the galaxy was vast and that not every path to civilization looked the same. Humanity had taken a different route, forged in violence and hardship, and emerged with strengths the assembly had long since abandoned. Captain Chin, Zelthar said carefully, the assembly will need time to consider your proposal. This is unprecedented in our history. We understand, Commander. The indomitable will remain in this system for one standard week. After that, we will proceed with our colonization efforts regardless of your decision. We hope for friendship, but we will accept neutrality. What we will not accept is interference. The new reality. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in thoughtful silence. Vex the more then officer was the first to speak. Commander, they are serious. That ship could engage our entire fleet and potentially win, not through superior technology but through sheer determination and willingness to take damage. That would an NBSP, our vessels. Zelthar nodded slowly. I know that is what frightens me and impresses me in equal measure. They have built a civilization on survival. They do not need us to protect them because they have learned to protect themselves. Over the next week, negotiations proceeded. Carefully, the assembly sent diplomatic teams to meet with Captain Chin and her crew. What they learned both disturbed and fascinated them. Humans were not warlike by preference, but they were prepared for war in ways that made assembly species uncomfortable. They had contingency plans for scenarios the assembly considered impossible. They trained constantly for threats that might never materialize. They built redundancy into every system because they assumed failure was inevitable. But they also had art, music, literature, and philosophy as rich as any species in the assembly. They valued peace and cooperation. They dreamed of a future where their children would not need to live under the threat of extinction. They were in their own way reaching for the same stars the assembly had claimed long ago. The aftermath. In the end, the assembly agreed to recognize human territorial claims and establish formal diplomatic relations. It was not the usual pattern of an elder civilization welcoming a younger one into a protective embrace. It was two entities meeting as equals, each bringing different strengths to the relationship. The assembly offered knowledge, technology, and access to their vast network of trade and information. Humanity offered something the assembly had nearly lost: the memory of what it took to survive when survival was not guaranteed. Captain Sarah Chin and Commander Zelthar met one final time before the Indomitable departed to begin its colonization mission. They stood in a neutral conference room aboard an assembly station, two beings from vastly different backgrounds trying to understand each other. Commander, I hope we did not frighten you too badly, Shin said with a slight smile. The historical archive was perhaps heavy-handed, but we needed you to understand that we are not children needing guidance. Zelthar's three eyes studied her carefully. Captain, you did frighten us. You reminded us that the galaxy is larger and stranger than we remembered, but you also taught us something valuable. Peace is precious, but it must be maintained by those strong enough to defend it. Your people remember that lesson. Perhaps it is time the assembly remembered it as well. Chin extended her hand, a human gesture of respect and friendship. Zelthar studied it for a moment before reaching out with his own silver skin appendage. The contact was brief but significant, a bridge between two philosophies that might have clashed but chose instead to learn from each other. As the Indomitable vanished into hyperspace carrying its crew toward new worlds waiting to be settled, Zelthar stood at the observation deck and thought about the future. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had arrived, bringing with them ideas and strengths that challenged everything the assembly thought they knew. It would not be comfortable, but growth rarely was. The silence that had greeted humanity's arrival had been broken not by violence, but by understanding. It was a beginning, fragile and uncertain, but full of possibility. And in a galaxy where peace had reigned for 8 millennia, sometimes the greatest gift was a reminder that strength and compassion need not be enemies. The stars continue their ancient dance, but now they danced to a slightly different rhythm, one that included the drum beat of human determination alongside the harmonies of assembly civilization. It was a strange music, but it was beautiful in its own.